Hey guys, I don't know about you, but I have been doing chapter 6 all day today, so I am happy to announce that we are on our last lesson of chapter 6. We're going to be looking at the third and final way of writing the equation of a line. Okay, so today's lesson is 6.6 general form. So the general form of the equation of a line is also sometimes called the standard form. And the way we write it is ax plus by plus c equals 0, where a and b are just coefficients, so they're just numbers in front of the x and y, and then c is a constant, so it's a number that's by itself. The one important thing to know is that a, b, and c do all need to be whole numbers, and the a has to be positive. The B and the C could actually be negative, so these could be minus signs in here, but the A has to be a positive number. Okay, so let's look at how to use this. Okay, if you are given the equation of a line in general form and asked to find the slope, the easiest way to do that is to convert the line into slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b, and then just read the slope off of that, wherever your m value is. If you're asked to graph a line and you're given the line in general form, again, the easiest thing to do is just convert the general form of that line into slope-intercept form and then graph it that way, where you plot the y-intercept and then rise over run to the next point according to your slope. You can also graph by solving for the x and y intercepts, but that's 2 steps instead of just 1. So I would recommend just converting to slope-intercept form. So with that said, obviously you need to know how to convert to slope-intercept form. So that's what we're going to be working on first here. So when we're converting from general form to slope-intercept form, what we're really trying to do is isolate y, because obviously y is by itself in y equals mx plus b. So let's just try an example here. So if I had 0 equals 4x minus 6y plus 3. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move my y to the other side. So in this case, I will add 6y, which means adding 6y to the other side. Now 0 plus 6y is just 6y, and that leaves me with 4x plus 3. Now to get the 6 totally by itself, I need to divide by 6, which means I have to divide both of these terms by 6. That leaves me with y, and then 4 over 6 can be written in lowest terms as 2/3, so 2/3 x. And then 3 over 6 can be written as 1/2. Because it is the b value, you can choose to write it either as 1/2 or as 0.5. The only thing that has to stay as a fraction is our slope. Okay, but that would be it. That would be our final answer. Next up, we're just going to work in the opposite direction. So we're going to start with slope-intercept form and convert it to general form, which means moving everything to one side so we have a 0 on one side. Doesn't matter which side the 0 is on, by the way. So let's start with y equals negative 2/3 x minus 4. Step 1, just like when we were dealing with slope point form, you want to get rid of the fraction. And you do that by multiplying by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply that term by the denominator. That will cancel it out. I also then have to multiply all the other terms by the denominator. So times 3 times 3. So when I'm doing that, I have to multiply all terms by the denominator. That leaves me with 3y equals negative 2x minus 12. Then I want to get everything to one side. So I'm going to move the entire 3y to this side of the equation, and I do that by subtracting 3y. That leaves me with a 0 on the left. I still have my negative 2x. I'm just going to move this negative 3y into the second position because it should go x, y, and then my constant. Remember, when I move a term, the sign in front of it moves with it. So even if this was like a plus 12 here, this would be a minus sign, and then that would be a plus. And then the last thing you have to remember is all of our numbers have to be whole numbers, which they are, but the number in front of the x has to be positive. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to take this entire equation and divide it by -1. And all that does is it changes the signs of everything in the equation. So I'll end up with 2x plus 3y plus 12 as my final answer. Just a reminder, it is okay if these two plus signs ended up as being minus signs. It's just the number in front of the x that has to be positive. The last thing that we're going to have to be able to do is to convert slope point form to general form. Yesterday, when we were learning about slope point form, we learned how to convert it into slope intercept form. Now we're just going to look at how to convert it into our final form. So let's start with y minus 1 equals 3/5 x plus 2. The first thing that you want to do, again, is get rid of the fraction. And in order to do that, when we have slope point form, I'm going to multiply by the denominator here, and that cancels out. And then I take the entire other side and multiply it by the denominator as well. So multiply each side by denominator. Really what I'm doing is multiplying every term by the denominator. So I'm multiplying the 5 and the -1, and this is all one big term because it's things that are multiplied. Then, of course, that leaves me with 5 times y minus 1 equals 3x plus 2. So my second step has to be to distribute, which is the same thing that we did when we were converting slope point form to slope intercept form. All that that means is multiplying those numbers in front into the brackets. So that gives me 5y minus 5 equals 3x plus 6. Then I am going to start moving everything to one side. So I can start by moving my 5, so plus 5 plus 5. That leaves me with 5y equals 3x plus 11. Now, if I was converting this to slope intercept form, I would just divide everything by 5 to get the y by itself. But in general form, I don't want the y by itself. I want a 0 over here, which means instead of dividing the 5 away from the y, I am going to move the entire 5y, and I do that by subtracting it. That leaves me with a 0 on the left, 3x. Again, I want my y to be second, so I'm going to grab the entire -5y, including that negative sign in front of it, and then move the positive 11 to the back. And now I just want to make sure that my coefficient in front of my x is positive, and it is. All my numbers are whole numbers, so that is my final answer. So that is it for lessons in chapter 6. You will be getting some chapter 6 review questions soon, and then your chapter 6 quiz will follow in like a day or two. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions about this. Being able to convert between different forms of the line is really important. So we did 3 different conversions today. We also did a couple conversions the last couple days. So just make sure you're familiar with that, as well as how to read a graph. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.